I enjoyed the outrage and anime video. I really enjoyed the other video we did that was about something. The censorship video. I really enjoyed that one. And so I wanted to check out the 20 times Dragon Ball was too risky for America. I know that they've had changes to blood. I know they've had changes to, I think the hell censorship was in there last time too, but nothing too major in Dragon Ball Z that I can remember. But let's check it out, see what they got, man. Play.
Dragon Ball Z was never meant to be a children's show. It's violent and full of death and blood. However, this didn't stop it from being geared as a kids series when it was translated and broadcast in America, since all animation is mistakenly seen as kids stuff in the United States.
It took me so long to realize that they were adult animated things. I had no idea for the longest time.
This led to heavy edits and censoring that are now an infamous part of the franchise. So today we're going to be taking a look at all of these strange instances. Let's start off with something tame and reasonable, censoring all the smoking and drinking. America has reasonably strict restrictions on smoking and drinking in children's television, so these edits make a whole lot of sense. While Dragon Ball isn't filled to the brim with drinking and smoking, Bulma and her father have been seen partaking in a cigarette from time to time. And Master Roshi has enjoyed quite a few beers. All of these moments being censored in various American releases of the franchise.
I was about to say, in the American one, you can see Master Roshi drinking a beer. I do remember that. And Bulma smoking, though. I didn't know Bulma was a smoker. But yeah, I knew Master Roshi was out there drinking. He's a pervy old man who drinks and reads nudie magazines. Even as a kid, I didn't know what was in nudie magazines. I knew what they were.
Nothing too crazy came from these changes, since, like we said, they make sense. There would be no way that American regulations would allow characters to be smoking or drinking on screen, even if the show wasn't originally for kids. All in all, the only strange imagery that resulted from this type of censoring is that Roshi would be depicted drinking some very frothy water, or juice.
Bro, we knew that shit was beer. I don't know about y'all, but I knew that was beer.
Next up is one of the most infamous examples of censoring in Dragon Ball, the Home for Infinite Losers. This edit came from a filler episode during Goku's trip down Snake Way when the character accidentally fell off the path and down into hell.
The character, you mean Goku, and you mean when he ran down Snake Way, you mean for like a month and a half. It was literally like a month and a half of him fucking running every goddamn episode, and then they would do that shit on TV where they would run reruns for some random reason. So like randomly a part of a series, you would just be watching the same episodes over and over and over again. Terrible.
But when it came time to translate, dub, and air this episode in America, the whole hell thing had to be dropped, since references to religion are a real big taboo in kids shows, apparently. It's easy enough to just refer to hell as something else, but unfortunately, there were two prominently featured characters in this episode wearing shirts with hell written right on them, making things a hell of a lot more difficult. However, by editing hell to hiffle, hell could be renamed the Home for Infinite Losers, making it a place where all the defeated go to after losing a battle. Silly solution, but a pretty creative one that deserves some credit for being resourceful. As we've stated many times before, Master Roshi is kind of the worst. While he's a great master of martial arts, he's also a perverted, problematic character that has done some straight-up horrible and lewd things to women.
He really has.
As such, a lot of Master Roshi's ridiculously perverted acts had to be censored. Some examples of this include his attempts at groping Android 18 being removed, any instance of him seeing Bulma without her clothes on being cut or edited, and his desires being toned down. Instead of wanting perverted things from girls, he just wants to go on a nice walk or a date with them. Some of the worst instances of Roshi's perverted nature are, of course, moments where he attempted to inappropriately invade the personal space of underaged women, like Videl or young Bulma. Every single one of these instances had to be cut, censored, or edited in order for the series to be more kid-friendly. Another example of reasonable edits and censoring in Dragon Ball comes in the form of covering up nudity. Seriously, it's actually pretty crazy how lax Japan is when it comes to on-screen as well as on-page nudity. Sure, different cultures and all that, but you really only see that kind of thing in the more adult-oriented anime these days. Furthermore, even the more adult anime didn't even show full frontal nudity, something that Dragon Ball did a whole heck of a lot of, especially with Goku and Gohan, particularly young Goku and Gohan. Suffice it to say, there was a lot of nudity in Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z that needed to be censored when it came to the American broadcast. For everything from Goku fishing with his tail in the first episode of Dragon Ball to Gohan's first and second great ape transformations, their bodies had to be less exposed, resulting in some decently done edits, as well as some laughable edits that have gone down in infamy. It's time to get into the nitty-gritty of Dragon Ball censoring.
Hey, Raditz wasn't no bitch, bruh. Raditz killed a lot of people. Wow, you know, he was a savage.
That is death. Specifically, how the series couldn't mention killing or dying. This seems like it would have been a deal breaker for a series as violent and deadly as Dragon Ball Z, but a solution was found. A weird solution, yes, but a solution nonetheless. The workaround for death in America's broadcast of Dragon Ball Z was that dying would be referred to as being sent to the next dimension.
No!
A solution that deserves some praise for its creativity, but ultimately went down in infamy for being one of the most ridiculous elements of early dubs. This was just one of the many ways in which death was censored in Dragon Ball Z, but it's easily one of the most memorable, mostly because of the ridiculous nature of characters saying, "I'll send you to the next dimension," when they were taking somebody's life. Editing out death was the biggest hurdle that Saban and Funimation had to jump over in order to air the series in America, and one of the weirdest examples was Yamcha's death. Instead of the character's meme-inspiring corpse appearing in the center of a crater, only the crater itself was shown. Some obvious airbrushing being used to edit out the body. The implication here was that Yamcha's body completely disappeared in the Cyberman's self-destruction, making for a less violent death that Saban was more comfortable with airing on TV. It's an edit that kinda makes sense and ties in with the whole next dimension thing that this dub had going on, since it implies that Yamcha's body teleported to another dimension during the explosion. But it's still a hilarious edit to think about these days.
I'm trying to think about if I remember seeing Yamcha's body in the crater, or if I just saw that in a meme, or when I was just older or something watching it. Excuse me. You know, when we first started on the internet, we would watch episodes of anime, you know, together all the time. So I know I've seen, you know, the OVA of Dragon Ball Z before, but I'm trying to think if on, like, Cartoon Network I remember seeing a crater. I don't ever remember thinking that they were going to another dimension. That was never a thing. I never thought he teleported to another dimension. They died. I knew that. I'm just trying to think. I can't really remember. I do remember that there would be a lot of weird stuff like that, like people just disintegrating completely in other shows. I just don't remember a Dragon Ball Z or not.
Saban knew how many memes would come out of this character's death, but maybe they'd have left it in.
Yeah.
One of the strange edits in the Nicktoons broadcast.
I think that's the point, is that I wouldn't remember. I do remember Tien's arm being blown off, though, and Chaozu dying. I remember that. And I remember the whole crew dying and needed to be resurrected because they were dead, specifically. I remember being excited also the first time they got resurrected, and then being very tired of their resurrections later on in life, for sure.
Dragon Ball Z Kai was Goku's death, specifically how unviolent it was. As you all know, Goku's first death was the result of Piccolo's special beam cannon, which Goku fell victim to because he was holding down Raditz for Piccolo to execute, blah blah blah.
And I remember even playing that in the video game and it being hard as hell to like rotate the little sticks to get Goku to keep Raditz in Piccolo's line of fire.
Piccolo's special beam cannon pierced through both of them, leaving Goku with a massive hole through his body. At least that's how it happened in the original version of the series. But when it was broadcast on Nicktoons, that big ol' hole in Goku's chest was filled in. And no, we don't mean he found inner happiness or anything like that. The hole was literally filled in, since Nicktoons colored over it in an attempt to make his death seem less violent, editing out the blood as well. Gotta hand it to Nicktoons, the edit is pretty good, but true fans of Dragon Ball knew something was off. The next one...
Oh, it's true fan. I was just a kid. I couldn't go find it myself. I had no idea how.
Is a double hitter, an edit to avoid two major taboos of kids' television: religion and death. Of course, we're talking about Goku's halo, the little glowing ringy that he gained after dying and going to Otherworld. This little halo was a big problem for the CW Toonzai airing of Dragon Ball Z Kai, which had even tougher restrictions and censors than the Nicktoons version. Because of this, the reference to death and religion that was Goku's halo had to be changed in order for the series to air on the kids' channel. Thus, Goku's halo was edited out. Sort of. Instead of just being straight up erased from frames, frames were edited and adjusted in order to transform Goku's halo into an orb of light? which really just raised more questions than a halo would have. Seriously, what does a glowing orb even mean? It just makes Goku look like he's being chosen on a character selection screen.
Interesting.
We've still got plenty of death-related censors to rifle through, so get ready for one of the funniest instances of attempting to cover up death in Dragon Ball Z. During Vegeta and Nappa's arrival on Earth, their space pods crashed through some buildings, likely killing anybody within them. However, when the Saiyans emerged from their ships, Vegeta mentioned that because it was Sunday, the buildings were actually empty, lamenting that they couldn't kill anyone with their crash landing because of this. This is bizarre and hilarious for a number of reasons. For one thing, how would Vegeta, an alien from another planet, know about the concept of being off for the weekend? Second, this also could be a reference to people being off for church, which completely negates other edits made to avoid religious references. Finally, the dialogue mentioning empty buildings was very clearly put in where there was previously no talking, making for an overall awkward censor.
And they took time to then finish killing all of those people. So this is about halfway done through the list. We're just gonna end the video here, and we'll just make it into a part 2 so I can go make some lunch, and I'll be back after that. All right, I'll holla. Peace.